Now that we have a proposed surface created, we need to now refine this proposed surface. This proposed surface has only been defined by the proposed contours, but there's a lot of things that are not right about it. One, we have flat areas that we've talked about already, and we also don't see our points doing any influence to this surface. So what we're going to do is actually add those points. I don't need the tin data layer to be turned on anymore, so I can click on the tin data layer and go ahead and turn it off. I could type in lay off command and just go ahead and let that turn off. We don't need to see it anymore. We could also turn lay off for any number of these elements that we do not want to see anymore, but we'll just go ahead and leave those on for now. First thing I'm going to do is actually add my point data to this surface as a definition. We'll go ahead and choose our point group option under our definition, and we'll just go ahead and choose add all points. Hit apply, hit OK, and we now have points now controlling our surface. You can see the high point of swales actually showing these points are now gathering to the triangulation is happening at those points. It's also happening down here. The next thing I want to do is actually modify my surface style. My surface styles is contours and triangles. We're going to want we're also going to need to show points in that surface. So I'll choose my style and choose create and edit. This pulls up another dialog. Choose my edit my current selection. You can create your own new style, but I'm going to go ahead and choose my points to be turned on, and I also want to go ahead and modify with that point the way those points look. If I don't go in and change the point sizes, they're going to come in massive on our sheets, and it'll be very, very confusing. I just type in 0.02 as my size, and I'll leave the size in absolute units. You can also change this so it scales with the zoom. I'll hit apply, hit OK, choose OK again, and what should happen, we now see little points in our intersections of our triangles, and that's going to be particularly helpful as we move our cursor or points around. We actually don't need this triangle anymore, so I'm going to type a layoff on this one as well. That was our doors. We do want to leave our center lines of swales in place, and I'm going to go ahead and just leave the spot elevations as a label so we can see what those elevations are as we correct our surface. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move my spots to the corners of my buildings. I also notice I want to turn off my layers, my hatch. So I'll type lay off again, hide those hatches, those don't need to be there either. Okay. Escape. What I want to do is actually edit my surface. I'm going to move that spot to where it really is supposed to be, which is the corner of this building. So I'll choose my surface. Once my surface is selected, I will choose edit surface and move point. I'll go ahead and click on that point, but this point is actually not selecting. It's selecting an endpoint. We want to be sure that we're actually selecting only the point. So I'm going to go back down to my snaps. I am going to uncheck the endpoint and only choose node. That is what we're moving here. It's going to be helpful for you to actually target what you're selecting, so it'll be more predictive as to what you're doing. So I'll do that again. Go back into command, select the surface, go to edit surface, move point. Now it's actually moving the point. So you can see it shows up as a node. I clicked on it once, unclick, and look, I also need to have that selected. Forgot about that. So I do need to have an endpoint selected in here, so I have something to move against. I'm actually also going to turn on nearest because I know I'm going to have to put the doors with the location of doors. So those are the ones I do know I need: the node, endpoint, and nearest. I'll do that again. Select my surface, go to edit surface, move point, choose that point, choose that point, or choose the endpoint. Now you notice this, the point was moved, but this label did not move. That's because it's only a label. It doesn't matter. This is going to be turned off anyway. That was just a label to label that one point. The label does not move with the point when I move it on the surface. I'll do the same thing here to this corner. Click, click. And I also want to move this to the building itself. Notice it now has to use the nearest snap, so it snaps to the edge of that building. And I'll do the same thing to each one of these. Okay, I'm only going to work on this one piece of the building for this tutorial. I'll go ahead and offline here do the rest of them. But once I have that selected, my points are now moved. They're now around my building. I can now clean up my building a little bit more. Let's just see where we are with this building. When I right-click on my surface, I'll go to my object viewer, and I can start seeing. Okay, this was not ready for the video. You can see I've created, you can start seeing the definition in here of that building pad. Just starting to get there. So I need to do a couple things to more to the building pad. But I'm going to go ahead and move over here and just talk about what we're doing with the surfaces here. I'm going to come back to that building pad. So we want to clean up our flattened areas, and this is a flat area in here. And what I'm going to do is add some more points. So we're just working on our points here. I want to add another point in this area to create a better definition of this swell. This is a flat area up here. So we're going to go ahead and edit again. Click the surface, add a point. I think we are already in there. We could have just chosen add point. I'm going from this contour to the 145. So 144 to 145. I'm just going to put a point right in between here, somewhere, right in between, that is going to reference where 144.5 is. I click, I'll type 144.5, choose enter. That gave me the midpoint of my swale. I'm also going to go now split the difference between this top into the 144.5. I'll go ahead and eyeball it. I'm not going to interpolate perfectly. I'll type in 144.75. I think that's all I'm going to need to do to actually add those points. I don't want to do a whole lot of editing on the surface, because if I have to recreate the surface, I don't want to have to redo all of the work that I just did. I'm still in the command, so I can go to the edit surface and choose swap edges. And what swap edges will allow me to do is start to point that information, to clean up that surface, to have those the direction going down to that new point that I created. What this will do is make a much smoother swell, and it will also not be a flat spot. You may find it to a point where you're going to run out, where it doesn't have a point to snap to. This time I'm totally okay. That's what we want to see. We want to see these things going all the way down to a point, and we will continue until we actually get that department view telling us that there is no points for it to join to. This is going across. I don't really want that to go across like that. So I'm going to continue trying to get these as best I can to go down. I'm okay with that. That's kind of a kite shape. Maybe I'll do one more. I don't want to do that one. I'll leave that one alone. And we'll continue our way down. We don't want these, we want to kind of pull these things down so they're kind of pointing down to our next points as best we can. This one's actually going pretty far away. It's going from all the way up. Actually, no, this is okay. It's going from this edge down. That's exactly what we want. And so what we're doing is we're creating kind of this directional, moving our way down this swale. This too is a flat area. You're going to clean this up as well. And sometimes we'll have to add points to do that. To really see where our flat areas are, we will use a water drop, and the water drop needs to move itself through the swale, and that gives us a good reference to that. I'm going to turn off my my existing contours. Type lay off again. Choose the existing there. I also want to choose these minor ones. And so the only contours that we see now are the ones that are actually proposed contours, or the proposed surface, so it's a little bit cleaner for us to see. I'm going to use the water drop command just to illustrate what we're trying to do with these contours and how we're cleaning them up. I'm going to go to the Analyze tab and choose Flow Paths and choose Water Drop. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to create a new layer and call this layer $, again, $, dash, and I'll just call this flow path. Choose enter. I'll choose a nice pretty blue just because water is blue. I'm also going to change a couple things to this to show it as a water, so I'll put some dash or dots on it. I'm also going to change my line weight again to be a little bit thicker. Hit OK. I'll close that. Choose my, again, analyze, flow path, water drop. Choose the surface, and I want to choose my flow path as my, I think we did L water before, or I did. I'm going to use the $1. Hit OK. Hit OK. And now I can go and try to create water drops. You see that water is running right through there, then it hits the flat. You see it? It's hitting the flat. That's a flat surface. So the water almost went through my area. We did a good job here. It almost stayed in the center. Did a pretty good job. It stays in the center. That's what we want to achieve here. So when I draw up our lines, it's actually running right into my swale, exactly where I want it to be. If I go on this side of my high pointed swale, it's actually hitting the flat spot. It's hitting a flat spot. In fact, there's not enough definition up here for the water to move. It's actually going in that direction. And of course, it's it's actually doing a nice job here. Oops, I just lost my cursor's on a slippery surface here, or a shiny surface. So it's actually moving away from the building here. Actually better than I thought, based on having done nothing to this building yet. So that's what we want to try to do. That's why we're using the flow paths. We want to make sure we have a flat surfaces, or clean up our flat surfaces, and that's what we're going to do by just editing our surface, clicking on the surface, choose edit surface, and the choices that we have in here, we can delete lines. You're not going to need to delete any lines on this one because it's a pretty simple. We didn't really add any more points. You're going to want to add points where they need to be. You may actually have to add more elevation data in here to add more definition. But I would caution you not to create too many points in here to shape this surface. If you find yourself adding a lot of points to create this surface, you might as well add them as points. So therefore, or as points to be part of the point group. Because if you have to throw this surface away, you will lose all the effort of creating all the points on a surface. If you create them as points, as point information like you did with the spot elevations, you can always add them to any new proposed surface if you wanted to recreate that. Just to think about that in advance. We'll go ahead and we'll isolate this layer and go and throw those away. It's nice to have that on its own layer. I'll delete that, unisolate. And what we're going to do is we'll continue cleaning that up all the way around. But now I want to show you how to do the building pad. To do the building pad, we're going to go ahead and actually turn off our surface for a second here. I'll go ahead and no display it. And what I want to do is put an offset to this building. Again, 0.1 inside. And this offset will actually create this. We're going to use an elevation for the FFE. Remember, we cannot create a vertical wall in a modeling program like Civil 3D. So we will have a little bit of an offset to that wall. Or that surface, so they're not right on top of each other. No vertical lines or lines on top of each other. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set this to an elevation. I'm going to choose the inside line and the FFE on this, and I don't remember what that was. I'm going to unisolate, put that back. I don't remember what the FFE is, so I'm going to turn on my layers here and just choose my L layer, which is where my FFE was saved to or written onto. So now I have my FFEs. I'm going to go ahead and choose that inner line and change my elevation to the same as my FFE, which is 143.30. Choose enter. And I'm going to go ahead and add this to my surface as a break line. I want you to actually see how the surface changes when I do this. So I'll go and choose my surfaces, choose my proposed surface, and let that go back to triangles. Contours and triangles. Actually, it also has the points now because we changed that style. Those points are there. And I'm going to choose that inner line, which has elevation, and we're going to add this as a break line. Break lines are any lines that we use to further define a surface. They're just like contours. Hit add. I'm going to leave this all as everything here the same. Hit OK. And what now just happened, you can see a line now crossing through here. And it creates the flat area. But what we have here is that this is going, all the points are grabbing to the lower part of this building. So if I were to look at this surface, again, I'm going to try to quick object viewer this. In the object viewer, you could see what's happening, and I'm never getting this tool right. You can see inside there, hit shift on, I don't really have a defined wall. This is not a defined wall. It's kind of going down. It's going down to that low point. You can see how it's going right down to that low point in here. That's not what I want. I want this to actually hold a wall up and a wall around the side. So what I need to do is actually create an elevation information around this edge. Now you might think, oh, I can just set this to an elevation like I just did for my base. Excuse me. But I can't, because this piece, I'm gonna turn this dynamic off. The outside edge is not the same elevation. So I'm going to use a new object, and it's called a feature line, to create a line that runs around the top at the elevation. So I'll go ahead and use the feature line tool, but I do want to make sure that I only have, when I use feature line, I want to make sure that I only have node turned on, because I want to snap to only the nodes. It's going to work a lot easier for us. Choose feature line, create a feature line. Thing when you create a feature line, we do not want to choose a site. Sites are actually groups of grading information. We're not putting in a new group here. We'll go ahead and hit OK. We'll let this be the CTOPO feature with the templates asking us to do. Hit OK. And you can see here it's only snapping. It's not snapping to anything but a point. That's why the node thing is turned on. And we're going to follow around the top of our building, or the base of our building, not the lower area. Click on that, and we're going to pay attention to what the elevations are showing up here in the description. That's saying 143.5, which is the same as that spot elevation here. You can see it's 143.5. That looks good to me. To accept it, you press Enter, and you can see now the feature lines in an active command. We also have this door, so I'll click it again. It's telling me that it's 143.20. That is correct. Hit Enter. You'll verify this all the way around. Click this again. It's telling me that it's 143.20. That's correct. And I also want to hit these where the contours come across. And so if there's a contour that's running here, that is a contour, these will be whole numbers. So that's 144. That's correct. Do this again. Hit Enter. And it's nice because the node, because I can be pretty coarse on my selections here. That's correct. I don't have to be zoomed way in, but I will up here because I have the two spots next to each other. Click it again. That is correct, 145.5. Get out of my way. Go to my contour, 145. Looks good. It's almost there. Got one more, I believe. Click. That's correct. And I can just choose close in my dialog here. I think that was my last contour. Yes, it was, from my last piece. Hit close. I now have a feature line running along the outside of my building, which is now running along the elevation data or elevation surfaces that I want it to be. So I'm defining that as my edge of my surface. So let's pay attention here. When I can zoom in, when I add this to my surface, this point should now move back up, or the surface will triangulate outside of my building, and it'll only be one line in here. So with the feature line selected, I will choose add it to my break line definitions of my proposed surface, hit add, hit OK, and that moved my surface up. If I now view this in as a as an object viewer, I should now have a more clean, if I ever can figure out how to use this gadget. But look at that. That is absolutely sweet. That's a very clean wall that I just created, because I'm now using a feature line that runs along that surface as we defined it, including hitting those contours into our spots, including creating a flat area. I'm not even going to try to get to the flat. Actually, if I look at the front, we should be able to see a flat area where our door would be. right there. It's a nice flat area right there where the door is. Works really well. With that, I'll conclude this tutorial. I'll continue working on this surface and actually cleaning up the rest of the information, and we'll talk about comparative surfaces next.